That long. Take it home, bring it back to me someday.
The last signature.
No, I don't.
How's the patience?
My wife. What? This is the only one.
If you guys need me to toggle between the agenda
Give me my iPad out of there, but
Yeah.
I have to squint.
You can see that TV.
I know, that's
Okay, I got the nod that we're ready to go here, and today is February 12th, and today is full moon.
So you can. Full moon.
Snow moon. It was at 8:53 Eastern time. Anyway, I did this before. This meeting and all other meetings of this finance committee are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the media in accordance with Wisconsin statutes so that the citizenry may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting. Roll call will indicate everybody.
We are all here.
Okay. And before we do the agenda here, I would like to move numbers 5 up a little here, either to right after 1 or something like that in there. So Heidi's got a prior commitment here, and just so she's safe to get out of here. So maybe just switch 5 to 2.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll move with those changes.
I'll second that.
Discussion on that motion to amend the agenda to turn them around. Call that question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. Minutes from the January 8th meeting.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Don't we have to approve the agenda
Agenda?
as amended?
Yeah, we should go back and do that.
Warren moves to approve the amended decision.
Is there a second to the amended agenda? By
I got a question before that. At the law enforcement committee yesterday, we were talking about door security. And the executive committee had pushed it forward. It's not gone anyplace. When do we, before we go to, when do we take that up in the future and when does it come forward? So the sheriff then can get his budget and everything going and the people hired and I mean,
I'm
we
gonna
talked about it at the executive committee and we passed it to come up with
It's not on the agenda, so I'll let Finance Chair Federowitz address his
okay, all
his
right.
position, and then we can move on.
Right, I'm just
Thank
gonna address it the best I can. There's a lot of questions need to be answered before we can move forward with that. I would expect to, my plan right now is to have on the agenda for the March meeting, security for Judge Nielsen, and then probably for the April meeting to hopefully have enough information to take the next step. There's a lot of unanswered questions on this whole process.
Thank you.
So I guess the question is, who's collecting that information? Who's asking the questions?
I'll be
why?
asking, I probably have our chair also be asking.
Why aren't we all getting the information at the same time?
You will.
My suggestion is if anyone has questions that they would like Chair Federowitz to address to the Sheriff, please direct them to Chair Federowitz, and then the information can be gathered in one place and then shared back out.
Okay. It's gotta be addressed. That's the thing.
Yeah, no,
No. Anything else before I call the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion's carried. We did the minutes or did we?
No, we
Okay.
have, make a motion to accept the minutes.
Yeah.
And I had a second from Supervisor Zog.
Any other questions on the minutes? All the question, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, motion's carried. Public comment. We'll go on then with point number 1. Jeff,
Good morning.
Good morning.
At the October Finance Committee, we had a handful of opioid settlement fund projects approved. And one of the projects was to provide some allocation to restock our vending machines with Narcan. One thing I'd like to add or adjust to that approval is Narcan and possibly Narcan accessories. One thing we've been looking at, and we've talked to first responders and law enforcement, they've been carrying Narcan, and one thing that's been really helpful for them is have these belt attachments. And our sheriff's department does have these and utilizes these. Some of the municipal law enforcement agencies have some, but some of them don't. So I would like to request that as part of the approved amount to use for naloxone, which is Narcan, to include accessory items such as specifically this type of item, but maybe other things that are similar and as an accessory to using Narcan. So the amount that was approved was 11,880 and would just be included in that amount. That's all I'm asking.
Mark so moves for that adjustments as recommended by
I'll second that.
Chad.
just a question for the legal counsel. Is that amount is something that had to come here? Is that something that couldn't be approved on his own level? Just so I understand how that worked.
I think we've had, the projects have all come, we have a work group that meets quarterly with some staff members, but I think the budget requests are coming through JED. So unless we want to set up a different policy through JED through this committee.
Okay, so any amount that would need to come through here then
I think that we want to be as transparent as
because of
possible
the settlement.
with the funds. So
That's fine, everybody understands that. I guess that's what I wanted to get the clarification. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Call the question, yeah. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, Heidi.
Thanks so much for taking this into consideration, so I can get back from a meeting, but the first item on the agenda is a child support budget amendment. I'm requesting to move $35,000 from personnel services to contracted services. This is for a vacant position. A portion of that, Diane's not gonna fill that right away, so we're just reaching out to Jefferson County to do some contracted services for that position. So we're just moving $35,000 from personal services over to contracted services to support that contract.
And then I'll speak a little bit on that. So I reached out to Jefferson County or other colleagues, and Jefferson County has a diminishing caseload. So they are talking about maybe reducing a position. So by helping us out through the end of June 30th of this year, they can help us. They're going to dedicate 6 staff people to help with our backlog and our enforcement cases. Right now we have almost 400 referrals that need attention, so they're gonna help work through that. The reason why I'm not filling a position right away is because the training time is so intensive that it's more bang for the buck, except, to use a phrase, to get 6 seasoned people to jump in and help us get back on track than to have somebody new on site where my seasoned people have to spend touch time training that person, and that person's not up to speed. I hired somebody in August. That person right now has about 2/3 of duties that they're trained up to do 400 cases, and the person I hired in December has no assigned cases so far. So that's our 3 years of turnover has created the backlog. So and as Heidi said, the funds have been allocated for the 5th specialist position. I'll recruit starting in April with Dana, hopefully to have that person on board July 1, when we're in our new space as well, our new temporary space in phase 1 of the courthouse. So thank you for your consideration, and Jefferson County's been really good so far, and they're gonna start tomorrow if it's approved today.
Okay, timing's perfect.
Well, they were ready to start 3 weeks ago, but I needed to have the contract in place because I just couldn't move money around. It's because Heidi's rules, which I respect.
We can't move, we have to move money from
One line item to the other. Yep. So respecting the process.
Mark so moves to transfer the money.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to transfer the funds. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion's carried.
Thank you.
Hope we get caught up.
Thank you. We will.
The second item is just an update on the finance department. We had a accounting manager that is no longer with the county. That position became vacant early part of January. We've since filled that position with Amy Livinggood. She's an accountant within our department, and she accepted that position late last week. So she'll be moving into that role, much like what Diane just did. We just did with Diane. Next month, I anticipate coming back to this committee and talking through what it would look like to use some consulting services as we transition Workday, rather than filling the vacant position and just trying to get some help in setting up the system in-house with some background looking at CLA to do those services for us. So I'm just working with CLA right now to try to figure out what that structure would look like. And once I have that information, then we'll be able to move forward. We've been spending, again, that by 11 o'clock, it's a lot of time on the Workday project itself. And so just having someone to walk through some of those processes with us to make sure we have it set up correctly will be very beneficial to the department. So that's kind of what we're thinking right now. So just wanted to give you that update. The financial analysis is actually 2025 financial analysis. I brought forward to you January. There's not a whole lot to even review. January's, is a tough month, but it's also too soon to bring you 2024 because we're still continuing to close out 2024. I'm hoping that we flip expenditures back and revenue back for anything that we receive up through February 28th, with the exception of grant funds. So once, hopefully by March, I'll have a pretty good idea as to where the funds have ended. But I'll just go through the January piece of it, and we'll just start out with the operating cash flows. Currently, the operating cash flows are in line to where they were in previous years and a bit higher than 2021 and 2022. The delinquent tax fees owned by county, those continue to drop. So you can see that as we project out, those are in a good spot as opposed to previous years. And so once we get the February balance, depending, I don't think there's going to be much fluctuation between what the February balance was in 2024 versus 2025. But any adjustment to that becomes an unspendable fund balance, which then directly impacts our unassigned fund balance. So that's why we keep a close eye on that piece. Interest on investments booked in January is 91,548, and again, I booked that. I worked on this over at the end of last week, so we might have had more interest income, but that's where it was as of that time frame. Interest on delinquent is at 13,381, and we're projecting out to be just under budget. And understanding projections in January are a little bit difficult, so right now that's projecting to stay right within the budget. The sales tax was a big month in January, which was helpful because we had a pretty small amount in December. And so right now, if you look at that big amount in January, it is projecting to be over budget. I don't anticipate that to be the case. But that's where it's showing right now. Operating revenues are in line as previous years, but we're on about 1.4 million, under 8% of the budget. Again, a lot of grant funding equates to that direct impact. The expenses are also in line with previous years. We're about $220,040 over 8% of the budget. However, we do pay a large amount of expenses in January for the full year. For example, the library aids go out in January, which is part of that number, along with some of the maintenance contracts and agreements. Those are expensed in January. So that's why I show the graph, to show that we're pretty much in line with what we have done in previous years. So that's where we are in the operating. Highway cash flows remain at about $4 million as of January. Closed out the year at just under 4.6 million. So the highway cash flows are a little bit are pretty high. But I may have to take some of that to cover transportation services fund, because the transportation services fund is over budget for 2024. So once I get that closed out, we'll be able to figure out what we'll need to take from the highway operations to fund the transportation services fund. The rest is all detailed, and again, being just January, I'm not going to go through a lot of detailed and pages 4 and 5. If you have any questions on those, we can always come back and revisit those. And then I just included the 2024 capital improvement plan. I'm in the process of reaching out to departments to find out where they're at on their projects. And then next month, we'll be bringing forward a non-lapsing for any of the unspent capital improvement funds. And then we'll be able to have a better idea of what we have available in the capital improvement program. But this is still the list from 2024. I haven't added the list for 2025 because a bunch of this, a lot of these projects are going to fall off because those are completed, and then we'll just start out with a smaller list for next year. And then, so that's where we're at on that piece. I did not include the special revenue funds. I want to take some time to really evaluate what those look like at the end of 2024, and then try to incorporate those into the next report that I give to you in March, with the possibility of into April, because I am out in March for the finance committee meeting, and I don't think I will be available to come in unless the finance committee is changed.
Having her said that, I was aware of that, and she needs a vacation. I'm not gonna argue. So the question is the first Wednesday in March workable to have a finance meeting for the committee?
The first week of the month, there's probably nothing going on.
Usually that first Wednesday, but that'd be ideal, because Heidi and I talked about this a little bit, and the alternative otherwise would be, I think, the third or whatever, the county board meeting then is there, so it's like anything that comes up is probably a little better to handle before the county board meetings.
And since my flight got canceled the last time and I couldn't make it to the Monday meeting that we scheduled, I'm a little bit leery about that, about you adjusting your schedules for that Monday in case I run into that scenario once again.
So 9 o'clock on the first. Right.
Wednesday is.
Ash Wednesday.
Okay, well now you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all I had unless you have any questions.
Where are you going on vacation?
Punta Cana.
Sweet.
I already looked, it would have been 7 o'clock their time to zoom in and it's a little bit, there's a lot going on in March. I yelled at my husband, I said, no more scheduling these vacations during finance committee weeks. I think he's got it now though. Any other, good? Thank you so much for moving me up on the agenda.
Chris?
All right, good morning. I'd like to introduce today with me is Jeremy Solon. Jeremy Solon is the Assistant Dean for Division of Extension. If there's some questions, he can answer them. He's also here as my backup voice because with my bug, my voice has been a little bit shaky. So there may be a point where he may have to step in. This morning, before you in the packet, or I put a packet on your desk in your spot, includes the 2025 contract between Waupaca County and Extension, titled the Board of Regents University of Wisconsin System. And also the Division of Extension County Partnership Guidance Document. A number of you have seen the guidance document, but I wanted to refresh this with you. This is the contract that was reviewed and the Ag and Extension Committee forwarded. Couple of things that I want to point out that are contained within, and then allow for an opportunity for discussion to move forward. Couple of things compared to the majority of the contract is similar or is the same as 2024. There's a couple of things that I'd like to highlight. On page 2, which would be section 2C, extension responsibilities, in coordination or discussion with the IT department, we have moved our electronic data to UW storage. So that has been transferred. We did that by December 31st. So any of our data, electronic data specific to our extension permit programs have been moved. So that is outlined there. Just wanted to show the table under number 3, under number 3 on page 2, that indicates the educators. This and the AmeriCorps member match. The total is 137,902. This is not new money. This has already been allocated in the 2025 budget process, so it's already been approved, and this is in line. Actually, it's in line with what has been in the past 5 years since I've been doing this. So I just wanted to point that out, that this money has already been through the review process and approved by the county board. In addition, also added to on page 3 indicates delegation of financial budget authority. This is an inclusion of something that had existed previously. There's an appendix or exhibit A on the back that basically acknowledges that the county provides myself and Penny Tank, provides that designation of financial authority to us for the specific areas that are outlined. These are consistent. This is consistent with practice, and there's no changes. This is something that would be included, and this would be signed one time, and then at any time if either party wishes to review it or there are changes in names or personnel, it would be reviewed at that time. Additionally, on page 4, that would be 5D. 5D is an added provision that was added in early in 2024 as the contract process rolled out. Included in here is the latest that is from UW Madison Division of Extension Legal Counsel. That's the highlighted portion as far as what that reads. There has been consultation and back and forth with legal counsel to revise that, and this is the latest that we have. This is the latest version that we have on file. or that is proposed. This includes mutual, if there's any incident that each party would notify the other if there was anything that would happen contained within there related to cybersecurity. So that is the document. I'd also like to point out or just share the Division of Extension County Partnership Guidance. This has been a working document that has been in place since 2021. Essentially, it was compiled from a number of different pieces. It is partnership with Extension Leadership and the Wisconsin Counties Association. This puts together some operating guidelines or operational guidelines for each of the parties and spells out some of the responsibilities a little bit more. Additionally, if you note on the last page, the last revision was made in November of 2024. That coincides with the memorandum of understanding that WCA released and allowed counties to review to enter in with counties. It would be, it basically is based on this document, but would be in a memorandum of understanding format. Corporation Council has a copy of the MOU, and that would be something that would be at the option of the county of whether you wanted to enter into that agreement. Extension does not require that for our continuing partnership, but it would be something that if the county were wanted to do, that would be acceptable to us, and we would run it through our process for signature.
Any comments on that?
I don't recommend the MOU, entering into the MOU. I think the contract is sufficient. I think there have been several conversations about the proposed contract from UW Extension, significantly focusing on the county's responsibility to provide IT equipment and services and supports for this program. I don't know if Brent is here, if he wants to come to address the committee. Historically, the county's IT has provided support for UW Extension and all of their equipment. It's my understanding that Brent wants to move away from that and have that be provided by UW Extension and not the county, and having that more in line with the district attorney's office and the clerk of court's office, who have their own independent IT. So I think, I don't know if I captured that for you, Brent, and that would be, as you can see on page 2, there's there are co-funded positions, and there's a federally funded position, which is the FoodWise position, and then we have 2 county administrative staff. So there's sort of it's a mixture of funding sources. But I think it's Brent's position that all of the IT to all of the positions that support the UW Extension programs would be supported by state UW Extension IT and not Waupaca County IT. Did I capture that, Brent?
Yes.
So, and that's, we've had conversation with Chris and Jeremy and folks in this room regarding, I can state with certainty the state does not quickly adapt to proposals in revisions in their contracts, and sometimes they say no, they're not going to accept the proposal at all. So the question for this committee is, do you want to accept the proposal as presented from in this contract? Do you want to talk about IT and the provision of IT services and counter propose regarding IT? Or do you want to say we're not interested in the contract? So those are, like any contract proposal. And as Chris stated, the funding, the 137,902 for the co-funded positions that's funds that are already allocated in the 2025 budget. So that's not a new ask.
I think the other thing we talked about in the contract was if different departments have are required or necessarily have to take a budget cut for, say, security or for the new building. We wanted language in here that said UW Extension would have those same cuts that the different departments did, and I don't think that is in there yet either. If we have to make them.
No, it's not. However, our operating budget is a county department budget. Therefore, it would fall under the purview of this committee and the county board. So if those cuts or reductions were determined, we are treated as every other county department, as the plan would be. So that's part of where we're, I guess, I don't want to say lockstep, but we're in tune with that, because ultimately it is the county's departmental budget as part of the overall annual budget process.
Great.
I just have a question for legal, because on the agenda it says review and discussion only. Is that where it's at, or?
No, you can act.
Okay, I want to make sure, because I just saw the way it's worded.
Yeah, and I think in the small group meeting we had, we didn't have a quorum of this group or any other group, but Lila and Dave and some staff met with Brent and Chris and Jeremy. So we just didn't know what the direction would be. So if it would be, we need to do more work on the contract, then that's a possibility. Or if you want to approve the contract, you can approve the contract, notwithstanding what the agenda has in terms of verbs.
So I'm going to ask another question of yourself, if I can, please. Because you made some comments there that some of these languages items are slow to change and so forth.
Well,
from maybe the state versus how quick we do it.
I can tell you we've been working on the cybersecurity contract probably since Halloween language.
That's correct.
Right, and so it's Valentine's Day, right? So that one paragraph has taken that long am I 100% satisfied with what we ended up with? No, right? So but that's the counter proposal. So what we have done, I should say, in terms of the funding piece, which is Chris and Mandy and I have bridge contracts up to each finance committee meeting. So from the first of the year to the January finance meeting, from the January finance meeting to the February finance meeting. I think we have one proposed to the next finance meeting. Maybe we'll go even to the April one, because you shortened the time for March now. So we have it, we're extending on a temporary basis the 2024 contract is how we're operating now. So and I don't think that's harmful, that has the language in it that IT continues to support UW Extension. And I can share that I think Chair Morak signed the lease for a space in New London for UW Extension to move. That move is imminent. If it hasn't already happened, the lease commenced February 1st. So they have a space to function in during phase one of the courthouse remodel, actually starting now. Nobody's in phase one just yet, but we're in pre-phase. So if you want to take more time to do the contract, we have to do the 2025 contract. We have this bridge in place to extend the 2024. So that's, if that's the will of the committee, that's the action that you direct us to take, and we'll continue to work through this.
Yes, that'd be my recommendation, that we have a group of department heads meet with Chris and Jeremy and so forth. We want to make sure that we got this ironed out the way that we would like to see it. Issues around things like the New London place. If we have to send someone down there, it takes a half hour to get down there, a half hour to get back, etc. Takes a lot of our time. And if we're looking at cutting staff, for example, in Brent's area, we're going to be very shorthanded just to support the county. So I'd love to look at the alternatives, really make sure that we're comfortable with whatever comes up. And I would very much look forward to signing another month or two extension. Let's do it right. And as opposed to pushing this through today where I don't know, to me, it's still questions outstanding.
Yeah, there are still a lot of questions that IT has, but I feel confident we can work together. I mean,
Yes.
we've been partners for hundreds of years, as I just read. But at this point, I would make a motion to move the UW Extension 2025 contract into negotiations. And those negotiations would include the county board chair, the committee chairs for HR, finance, IT, obviously agriculture and extension, and also the department heads from HR, finance, IT, UW Extension, and the Waupaca County Corporate Council. So we can all get on the same page, so we all know what we're signing, because I don't think right now we all know what we're signing, so.
I will second that motion.
Okay, you've heard the motion and that kind of makes me feel better the way it was worded for discussion to begin with. I now feel a little more comfortable because I was not ready to, first I saw this, okay, right or wrong. Any other discussion on the motion?
If Dave and Lila are nervous, I'm nervous, so I'm willing to go into negotiations over it.
I think we need, we have to iron out everything. We don't want any loose ends.
Exactly.
Okay, if any other comments before I call the question?
And again, then I'd be expecting to sign a MOU
Extension.
Yeah.
extension like we did the last month. Shouldn't be a problem continuing.
Call the question, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, right.
Okay, broadband expansion. So let me just quick set the table here. So just a very, very quick review. So ARPA dollars, we had $1 million set aside for broadband expansion, to which 900,000 of that was then brought segregated out for being local match money. So we have this ad hoc committee that was put together to put together recommendations as to how we're going to move forward broadband expansion. And so through that process, we created a plan to show where all the areas that require broadband expansion. We made a pledge at the last time that we had discussed this in front of finance that we were going to be giving $600,000 to a local match for Charter Spectrum for what's referred to as the lower level of Waupaca County. So that would include town of Caledonia all the way over through the city of Waupaca, surrounding Waupaca, and then it goes as far west as areas in the town of Dayton, little pockmarks of Dayton and town of Lynn. The northern area is town of Larrabee, the area around the city of Clintonville, and then the towns of DuPont and Wyoming, northern areas of Helvetia, and a little bit of St. Lawrence. And in that area, this committee, or the recommendation coming from the broadband expansion subgroup, was to give $300,000 to Frontier Communications for that area. And so that's basically where we're at right now. The reason why I'm in front of you right now is because basically that whole plan fell apart. So a few weeks ago, the CFO for Charter Spectrum said publicly that they are not going to be investing nearly as much into BEAD. BEAD is the broadband expansion, or the broadband equity, access, and deployment is what it stands for. So that's part of Biden administration's infrastructure money. So there's $1 billion available at the state, and that's what we're going to be leveraging. So Charter Spectrum has said publicly that they're not going to be investing. And so that sent us into a bit of a tailspin. So what does that mean for us? So we spent weeks trying to get a hold of Charter saying, hey, where are we at with this? Because we have an agreement that we're moving forward with this application. We're pledging $600,000 to you folks. Just late last week, we found out that they are abandoning that. They are not investing. They're not doing any of that project right now in Waupaca County, as far as they're concerned, is dead in the water. Okay, and so the other issue that we have is Frontier Communications. So our representative that we had from Frontier had recently sent me an email saying, hey, I'd like to discuss the application with you, which I thought was kind of odd because it's the same application. Why would we need to discuss it? So we ended up having a meeting, and now I understand why he wanted to have that discussion. The reason why is because they decided to cut off the entire western portion of their application. And so what that means is their application now does not include any of the town of Wyoming, town of DuPont. So this map, and I know this, I just printed this up right before I got here. I just got this. This green are the areas that Frontier is now looking at. And you can see conspicuously absent are these two towns right here, the town of DuPont and the town of Wyoming here. And then we had these areas in here that was also no longer included. And so what this means now is we have very little time to act on this as well. So the deadline for the application for BEAD is February 25th. So there's not enough time for me to go back in front of the broadband expansion subgroup to come up with a new recommendation based on what we just found out. And so what we have to figure out right now, we're kind of scrambling a little bit, is where does that leave us in terms of how much money are we still willing to give Frontier? Because Frontier still wants to apply. They still want to move forward with this as their proposal. Now, the representative from Frontier, their justification for this was that it doesn't make business sense for them because in that area to the west, in the town of Wyoming and the town of DuPont, it costs too much money for them to put the fiber down there, which I thought was ironic because the whole point of the BEAD is to make it economically viable. So they had decided, essentially, it was a business decision on their end that they're no longer going to look at those areas. And so where do we go with that $300,000? It'd be my recommendation to not give them the full 300 because they're not giving us what they were intending on giving us initially. And so I need to determine, I get a new recommendation from you guys so I can get back to Frontier to say, if you move forward with this application as you've recently amended, it's going to, now the local match is now going to be this much instead of what we initially had discussed. That's one issue that we need to talk about. The second issue is we need to figure out now what we're going to handle with the southern area of Waupaca. Now that we know that Charter Spectrum is out of the mix. What's interesting is that now Brightspeed, which was one of the ISPs that we had said that they were interested in that area, but our broadband expansion subgroup and subsequently the finance committee has said we're not going to go with them. The reason why we didn't go with them was because they, at that point, they were looking for over $3.3 million. It was like $3.5, $3.6 million is what they wanted for local match. Well, we weren't, that wasn't in the cards. So it wasn't even a consideration. Brightspeed is now emailing and talking with the town of Caledonia. Town of Caledonia has just recently sent off a letter of support saying that they want to see Brightspeed moving forward, which makes sense from their standpoint because with Charter Spectrum not in the mix anymore, they're going to take anything that they can get. And so Brightspeed with their application right now is looking only going to be in the town of Caledonia and a little bit off to the west. They're going to be going to the town of Fremont. How far west they go in terms of beyond if they cross the river or not is unbeknownst to me. So the question really now is I can set up a meeting with Brightspeed and we would tell them that, you know, as a county, we're not going to be giving you the 600 that we were going to be giving Charter, but we're now willing to give you this much. Unless, of course, you guys are still willing to give the same amount that we were willing to give the Charter. And in terms of level of service, it's the same. It's still fiber to premise in both applications for Frontier up in this area in the town of Larrabee and Brightspeed. So in terms of what they're offering, it's a lot of it is the same as what Charter was going to be offering as well. It's just not going to be as much.
Hasn't that Larrabee, that tower's been put up quite a while ago, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have and this is like I even told the guy from Frontier was that I'm not too concerned about that area, the area around City Clintonville. So the whole reason wwhy we had said yes to Frontier in that area is because they were going into the town of Wyoming and DuPont. Those are the areas of greatest need. We have a tower that sits on Highway 45 at the highway shop, and there's another tower that sits at the town of DuPont's town hall.
And those aren't functioning.
They're functioning. Oh, and they're working. Oh, yeah, they got a lot of customers coming off of them, but they don't have. This would give everybody fiber to premise. And so that's the issue with the problem with Wi-Fi or towers. It has limitations. It requires line of sight. So you're not gonna get everybody. Whereas this would give you, it's 500 to the
I
house.
think the toughest there is gonna be Wyoming. And then why would there be problem with Lind and Dayton?
So there's some areas within the town of Linden, there's just like little pockmarks, little islands that they have of no service. So there's some areas where they have it and some areas where they don't. And it's worthy to know too, on this map, you'll see like this orangish, reddish, orangish color. That stands for, that's the RDOF area. And so RDOF stands for Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. So that's that federal auction, and that was all won by Charter. And far as I'm understanding, Charter is building that out as we speak. So they are moving forward with that. And in the town of Dayton and the town of Lind, that's majority of that is also within RDOF. And Charter is building that out, but there are islands that are gonna be left.
And before we built the highway shop, that was incorporated into the city of Waupaca.
Yes, that's been annexed into the city.
So that's not in the town of Lind anymore.
That's correct. The new highway shop, yes.
Just a little more information, Brightspeed just wanted a letter of support from Caledonia. They didn't ask for any money. So we're not putting, Caledonia's not putting any money into it. We're just giving them a letter of, yes, we support this. Please come into our township. So I don't know if that affects how much we might throw at them or not.
Right.
But it's needed. When COVID hit, Caledonia was the worst township in the school district in New London. We were sneaking kids into town to use the library's Wi-Fi. So just so they could get their homework done.
In the planning and zoning meeting last week, Ryan presented the same information, Dennis were there too, and I made the comment too with Frontier. Yeah, we'll give them some, but how much, I'm not sure, okay? And I don't know if you've come up with a figure in your mind.
In my mind, the only thing that in terms of like a starting point would be half is what I'd be looking at. I mean, and just, you know.
Throw that out there.
100, that's what I was thinking. I mean, because I still think it's beneficial. It's still in the grand scheme of things, it's beneficial. So I think we should still give them some, but it's upsetting that they're not doing that area. And I don't know that it makes any sense. So the consultant had mentioned that maybe it would be a good idea for us to up the ante a little bit. And then maybe that would make it a little bit more interesting for them and they'd want to expand to the west. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think that makes sense. But that was what in my mindset, that's what I was thinking, was starting off at half. And to be honest, and that's a great point that you make with Brightspeed, and I should have mentioned that up front, was that they did not, in their conversations with me as well, they did not ask for money. They were just looking for support. It's just that offering that money makes it more attractive, so they get more points with their application to the state. And so in terms of increasing their likelihood of success, us giving them a local match money would definitely be advantageous.
What happens to the rest of the 600,000 if we only give, say, half or three?
It's just off the table.
So
It's
it's
the
gone.
600,000 is, yeah, right.
We don't get it.
Because since they rescinded that application, that 600,000.
It's ARPA funds.
That's our
It's-
money
It's
we
not
can't
ARPA
use.
Well, no, I mean, it's still within in terms of it's still on the table, in terms of, it's still been, the finance committee has already said that that's been earmarked for broadband expansion. And so it can still be used for broadband expansion. That was utilized from originally ARPA dollars is where it originated from.
And do we have to decide by the 25th of February?
That's when the applications are due.
Oh,
So Brightspeed needs to know whether or not they have the support of Waupaca County prior to that. And I would say well prior to that, because they may need to adjust their application. So we want to give them time enough to get that in by the 25th. And the other thing I do not know is when or how many other applications they're going, or other grants they're going to have within this cycle. I cannot imagine they're going to be able to distribute $1 billion within one grant cycle.
Right.
But there hasn't been that I've seen when they're gonna have subsequent, you know, and so if we were to decide to just we say punt and we'll wait for the next time around, I don't know when that's going to be and what that's gonna look like.
Heidi, is that gonna affect your, the ARPA funds or,
This isn't ARPA funding,
oh,
so
okay,
it's not gonna affect the ARPA.
okay.
We use ARPA funding to fund construction projects and made this fund, other funding that was funding the construction projects available for broadband.
Good.
So it's not tied to ARPA. And for my purposes.
So,
Okay,
so if we cut it, for the northern part of the county, cut it to, 150 and then give Brightspeed, say, hey, we have 150 we just came up with. Use the other half for Brightspeed, and then we still have that chunk of money for any possible future, projects that come up.
Cause I think Amherst Telephone kind of goes up towards northern Waupaca, don't they?
They do.
And we've done a lot of jobs with them and they're really good to work with. Frontier Communications, not so much. They're hard to work with, so I completely get it and keeping it a little more local, so yeah, I like your idea.
What are we gonna do with your area?
Well,
Right,
they didn't, Brightspeed, they didn't ask for any money, but if we take that 150 we cut from the original project, say, hey, we'll push this towards you to hopefully get that contract, that still leaves us with that 600,000, right?
Yep.
To use in the future.
But then that doesn't do anything for DuPont in Wyoming.
Unfortunately, no.
But if we'd have that 600,
300,000 left.
we'd have the 600,000.
Right, 600, yeah.
To maybe somebody will come along and say,
Well, Frontier went through bankruptcy, I believe.
Yes, they did.
couple years
So
ago.
Yeah.
they're working on the bottom half of the scale, always, trying to get going in the future, so.
Right.
Probably not gonna get a lot of service out of them.
Yeah, Frontier has been interesting to work with.
Yeah.
Amherst Telephone's fantastic. They've been
Yes.
great.
How about Serenity out of Wittenberg?
I'm sorry?
Serenity out of Wittenberg?
I don't know that I have a lot of work with
Okay,
that.
that's another one that we've worked with this broadband. That's
Okay,
pretty good.
so the other one that we have contacted is the Stockbridge Muncie.
Oh.
Because I know that they were doing a large broadband expansion project that are gonna be covering a large amount of Shawano. And so what we were looking at was, is it a possibility that we could even work from north-south?
Yeah.
Because the issue that we've been having is on the western side of the county, so TDS, that's TDS country over there.
Yep.
We've already contacted TDS and they basically told us they have zero interest. They have no interest in public-private partnerships and expanding beyond their service areas. Because they receive federal funding, have to money. So that's Connect America fund is what that is. So they have a service area that they are allowed to, that's where that money is basically financing or subsidizing them to expand within. Anything outside that, they don't care. Amherst Telephone is in that general area, but they're pretty far to the west yet. I don't know that they have any designs on going into the Wyoming DuPont. I don't know. Maybe in time, because I know they're also doing an expansion project into the town of Dayton as well and other areas within western Waupaca.
What will that take care of the problem with Dayton?
I think Dayton and Lind, between RDOF and Amherst Telephone, they're gonna be fairly covered. There's gonna be some islands, and that was what was so attractive about Charter Spectrum's application, was that not only were they gonna be doing town of Caledonia, town of Muckwa, Wega, around surrounding Wega, but they were also gonna be taking care of all those little pockmarks of those little islands that we have in the town of Lind and the town of Dayton, and we have a couple like in the town of Waupaca. We have these little spots.
Well, muck was a problem too, you just mentioned. You said muck was a problem too.
No, Waupaca was one of the areas that was part of that.
Was,
area.
was.
Yes,
Oh.
yeah, that and Charter was going to be, so Charter through RDOF. So you'll see this here, this is Highway 45 corridor going down. So this is all Charter is gonna be handling here. So you'll see, and it's not kind of hard to see here, but right at the end of my finger is New London. And so Charter Spectrum already has the area around New London, and they're gonna be expanding south from there. And that's what as part of their application. Now that they've denied or said they're not gonna be going through BEAD, now it's unclear as to how they're gonna be expanding south. Into Muckwa, that's the town of Muckwa, south of New London.
Good discussion. So I know, Pete, that was I don't mind that. If you want to make a motion, I think that's.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it for you.
Any other discussion?
Can we repeat the motion so- for me, please?
Please make sure I'm down. What was my motion? We're gonna reduce the funds available for the grant for which company was that?
Frontier?
For Frontier to 150.
100.
Reduce it by 150, right?
To make it 150.
To make it 150, and then we'll take that 150 that we cut and put it towards Brightspeed for their application for the grants.
There you go.
And that means no funds for charter.
Nothing at this time.
No funds for you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? It's too bad. I mean, you kind of put your hopes on this when you hear it the first time and then it's
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
call the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried.
Thank you.
Good job, Ryan.
Okay.
This is the plan that they came up with. Standing deputies, we have these desks. Talk with Tim, but that's.
So, am I up? I'm up.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Tim's okay with that.
I'm sorry?
That's just
I have
the way
3
the
resolutions.
plan is.
Do we wish to do one motion for all 3 and I'll just kind of recap them?
If it's legal, that's fine.
That's fine. Okay, they're all for the same department anyhow. So the first resolution, resolution number 52, these were, all 3 of them went to law enforcement yesterday and were approved for recommendation. Number 52 is for $1,000 or $1,500 from Brian and Lena Glazinski for the purpose of supporting the Waupaca Canine Unit. Number 53 also was at the law enforcement committee yesterday, is for a donation in the amount of $1,990 from ICC Events LLC for the purpose of supporting the Waupaca County Dive Team. And the final resolution is number 55. And that one is in the amount of $2,000 from Gerald L. Pagel Estate for the purpose of supporting the Waupaca County Canine Unit.
Also moved. Second.
Okay, like I say, it's always good to get money.
Yes.
Any further discussion on those 3 as presented? Otherwise, I'll call a question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. Thank you.
Then my next item is the 2024 dog reimbursement ratio report. And I'll briefly recap that because I know it's always confusing every year. So the dog tax money for licenses is collected every year. At the end of the year after the bills are paid for publishing in the paper. And the money, if there was any damages or anything like that, is taken out, as well as the disbursements for listing dogs. Once that money is all taken out of the account, $1,000 is rolled into the next year, and then the remainder of it is divided out by the license money sold per municipality, which gives us that ratio, which gives us the total of each town and city and village, what their amount would be to bring that account down to 0. So this ratio report just needs a motion and a second and to be approved in order for us to give that money back to those municipalities.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Must be yours, huh?
Yes.
Any further other discussion?
I'm sorry.
What catches my eye is Waupaca, city of Waupaca doesn't have a lot of dogs.
Which one?
Lindenville does.
City of Waupaca. I mean, according to this. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried.
And I realized I went out of order. I should have done the per diem.
I saw that, I saw that.
I apologize for that. So then the per diem for the month is in the amount of $15,912.85.
Need a motion for that.
Also move.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried.
Thank you.
Okay. Last but not least, treasurer.
Hey, Mark,
Morning, everyone.
where you been?
Trying to move around, my back went out this morning. Hurting, getting old. All right, got a few things for you today. So first thing on the agenda is the in-realm, and just kind of give you an up-to-date. We're working on those delinquencies of 2021. So we initially sent out a letter in November, kind of the initial first warning letter. We certainly did get some responses. My intentions are to delinquency notices based off of 2024. So once I'm done with settlements here this week, I'll be sending out delinquency notices for 2020, including these 2024 taxes. I plan to put a similar letter in with those that have 2021 notice delinquencies, kind of give them a second reminder. And then I plan to send out a final notice letter once I'm back here in March of notice to them as well. So giving you an update, our current list started out as 131 parcels with 98 different owners. That was back in March or November, excuse me. That number has been reduced. With Beth leaving our office, we're getting Carly up to speed, but if you remember, she came on board during our tax collection. So this has kind of been put on the back burner somewhat with everything going towards tax collection. So we'll be working on this here in the coming weeks with this. So I'll come back to you. I won't be back in March now with the change of dates. I'll be gone, but Bob here for it. But I'll come back in April with more updated numbers. So I anticipate those numbers being drastically reduced by that point. But we are working on 2021s. If you remember last year, we started on 2020 delinquencies. We were in a similar number, maybe just a little bit higher. But we had considerable numbers when we initially started, and we got down to the end. We only took 3 parcels back. So again, with having only 3 years of delinquency, it's a lot easier for them to dig out from in the past. So any questions on the in-realm piece? I'll be working with Diane. I'll send my letter, but once she starts with her letter, it certainly gets another level of response than mine. But we'll keep pushing on this to work towards that by the end of the summer and early fall for our court date. Financial review, I gave that out to you this morning. If you kind of look at the numbers, it's all kind of driven by tax collections. You'll notice that our numbers are up in January as expected with tax collections. Those balances will go down significantly next week when we disperse funds for our settlements, but we also get funds back for those that collect their own. So traditionally, this is a big peak month for us for collections. So speaking of tax collections, we had similar collections as last year numbers. We, as a county, collected roughly $70 million of our just shy of 90 to be collected. So I was a little initially in after December, thought those numbers would be down a little bit, but January finished up pretty strongly. So the 14 municipalities that we collect for, we collected about $33 million were processed through our office. The other 20 municipalities that collect their own collected about 37 million. So we do collect a significant portion of that. I do want to give a thanks out to Bank First. Again, there are 3 offices that collect for us: Waupaca, Clintonville, and the Iola offices. They collected about 1.8 million for us. So when we look at, I'll give you a little bit later when we go into what we're getting for a rate of return from them, but for their services to us to collect 1.8 and convenience for those customers are huge, so I appreciate what they do. So our balances as of end of January payments, we have about 16.9 million to collect. It's about 1.2 million up from last year, so we are a little higher, but not alarming number. Certainly had a number of people that we collected for come in and say, well, they only could afford to do the first installment versus the payment in full. So we're seeing somewhat more of that than we probably have in the past, and I think that's kind of a sign that the money is a little tighter out there right now. The other piece with tax collection, a little challenging. Again, we have a brand new system this year. I think overall went very well. Working with, if you've noticed on your tax bill, the barcode on the bottom was a huge piece for us. So we're able to scan them in. I know the banks appreciated that if they used it. I don't know how much they use it, but I know the municipalities that purchased the scanner for the barcode it was a huge help. So. As far as other interest related thing, if you look at that associated trust investment, we didn't get the statement here for January, but our beginning balance, now again, that's kind of a fund that we don't touch whatsoever. That's I would say kind of our 401k, so to speak. It's diversified investments through associated trust. The beginning balance this year was 5.3 million. Last year it was 5.152. So roughly we earned about 200,000 of value in that investment over last year. As far as the tax certificates, as Heidi mentioned, we're below $1 million at 879. So we're about $20,000 less than we were last year at this point. So again, keeping those years of delinquency down has certainly helped in this avenue for us. Sales tax was a great start. And again, I think I've mentioned this in the past, when we get our payment is usually by the end of each month. They have a cutoff date from the prior month. Usually it's anywhere from the 20th to 22nd of when they pay out. So certainly a good number for us, but you look at the later part of December was not part of that, and that's what we got paid in January. So December, if you look a year ago, December in the boxes on the bottom, we were down a little bit comparable to previous years. And now this January is the best we've seen by far in the last 5 years. So good start, but I think that'll balance out as the year goes on. Interest investments, you see we have 142,000. I was able to update this with, since Heidi ran her numbers, I pulled these this morning. So our monthly interest on investments was roughly about 140,000, which again is higher because Associated Bank, the amount of funds we have with them, which is tax money of almost 18 million with them. So that certainly brings in additional funds for us in the interest. Other than that, down below, the WISC investment, again, those are traditionally what I consider our longer term investments as well. We do have some CDs matured. I'll be looking to see what kind of rates those will renew at. Most CDs I've seen in recent are usually in the mid 4s for the most part, depending on how far out we want to go. So the rates are still pretty strong, and you can see that in our monthly rates for our money market funds are still well over 4% for the most part. Any questions on the financial part?
Just a comment, listening to the news with the U.S. standpoint, Treasurer, looks like they're not gonna do much. So rates will stay up a little while yet.
All right, so the next piece we have is ordinance. I worked with, I've been talking about this for months, that the law changes, the statutes have changed as far as in rem. So we did need to update our ordinance on administration management of tax deeds, land. So appreciate Diane help in working with this. So this was in your packet. How we're changing things a little bit. And in our department, I've talked about this for a while. Probably some of the bigger changes is I'll provide a report to you in May of those properties that we've not taken back. because they basically are blemished or have concerns with being, cleanup issues, ground, what's that word I'm thinking? Contamination. I know there's been one here in the city of Waupaca that's been left out there since well before I got here. So again, that's something I'll update. It's pretty rare that we have those. In fact, I've not passed on any since I've been here. But we'll get updated which ones those are. Otherwise, the biggest changes again is notification piece and the proceeds. So whenever we had a sale and we had a profit in the past, the only time those funds went back to previous owner was if it was their primary residence and they submitted a affidavit requesting that. Now that is automatic and it also goes back to any previous owner. So whether it's vacant land or rental, anything like that, those proceeds do go back to the previous owner. So that process, so us as far as seeing us make money on these is again not going to happen, and then basically a process of getting these back on the tax roll, and that's basically why you do these anyways. But in some cases we will not break even in some cases, because again, by the time we sell some of these properties, depending their condition, we may or may not get our taxes back out of them. We'll see what happens with them. So, so that's changed a little bit. The only time those funds would come back to us is we would be sending out a check for those proceeds. If that would come back to us unclaimed, it goes in our unclaimed fund, and after 10 years, we could take those funds. So won't be talking to you in 10 years whether or not we paid money. Somebody else will, but we'll at least have them in the coffers after this year if those funds do come back as unclaimed. There's no errors, things of that nature. One other change in here that's a big paragraph, and I really don't see this being a factor, is but after we take a property back, if it is their primary residence, they have up to 60 days if they want to repurchase that property. We would run a full, we would get a full, not letter report, but title report on the land. They would have to satisfy all liens, prove that they satisfy all liens before we would sell the property back to them or deed it back to them. So the timing on that's pretty short, and I really don't see anybody doing that unless they've missed the boat for some reason. But in most cases, they're better off making us whole, and before we even go to court as far as our taxes, that's gonna be a lot less than dealing with some of those liens. But it's something they had to put in as a provision. So it basically works around is them selling the property and then turn around and buying it back and not having those liens go away.
Is there something unusual there? I mean, just in case the person dies, now it goes into the estate. Do you have longer than 60 days or 90 days?
No, there is a 90-day notice to us that they intend to do that. So I think from I would think legally wise, we probably, if we have notice of that, we may have, would be in our best interest to probably work with them, because I think if it ends up going through the court process, we
It's probably rare, but
yeah,
good.
The ordinance is based on a model ordinance that a Tollus law put together for counties through the Wisconsin Counties Association. So the variables we chose, Mark and I gave a lot of the authority to Mark in his discretion to do very basic things instead of having that been done by the interim committee, which is Mark, Christian, one supervisor. So
yeah,
we simplified it, but there's the reporting requirement. The changes were caused by a United States Supreme Court case, Tyler versus Hennepin County, and it had to do with a takings claim that we couldn't take property without giving some equity back to the owner, or a government unit can't take property through the tax deed process without giving some equity back.
one other bigger change that we'll do in the past, as far as when we do go to sale on these properties, in the past, we used to make a tour and go out and look at the properties. We take into consideration what was owed on the property, looking at the property to set the sale price. That's now going to be basically determined by the assessed value. we'll go with whatever the last assessed value was on that property. That would be the minimal bid we would accept. There are other options. I know some counties are going with have an appraisal done, real estate evaluation done, but those are pretty costly. I think this was one of the options. There's no cost to it, and in most cases, it's probably going to be an acceptable dollar amount. I think in some cases, it's probably going to be too high. We may not get any bids. So if we do not get any bids, then we can go back. I would review with the NREM committee of lowering that price, and then we re-advertise it at a lower price. So initially, we go with the full, then we could come back with a realistic price to get the property moved.
And you can accept even a lower bid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
Yep, it kind of opens us up to move it. So
The second one.
it's causing some strife because in some cases it's going to be advertised for 3 weeks for no bids, and then we'll turn around and have to reduce it. But at least we're going to get the word out there and we'll eventually get to that final place.
Do you have the option on that one, Mark, to adjust it? Because appraisals, oftentimes it might be 10 years since the last appraisal or whatever. the time
Assessed
period is.
Assessed value?
Assessed.
Not really. I mean, we would go with what the assessed value is. So
I
in
was-
some cases, yeah, they're gonna be very high because they've not been kept up on. So I know I have 2 properties in the city of Clintonville. I think that we currently own that will now go up this spring. I think they're in the ballpark. I would say they're probably high. I mean, one was gutted by a fire, and so it's not been, both of those have been vacant for 5 years. So both of them, I'm a little leery that they're a little high, but I'd rather have it that way than the other route, because then they can come around and say, well, you could have sold it for more and we deserve more monies than we got. And that's the issue that happened with that county. So I think it's more protective that we go this route, because traditionally that assessed value is gonna be higher than probably what it should be. So I
You
think
never
it's
seen it the other way where.
very rare.
The value,
And if we do, I mean, we've had some properties, last time we sold was 2 years ago, we had multiple properties. And we get inquiries on a regular basis for those fixer-uppers want to swap. And there's a couple of them that we looked at each other and were shocked that they went as high as they did. So traditionally, if they're assessed too low, that's gonna encourage some sealed bids, and they're gonna probably go the other way.
and we decided just to be consistent, we are gonna use that value that's set by a third party, and we rely upon it for other reasons for every parcel, no matter what, just to be fair and equitable to every parcel that we come across and not have any variables.
Yep. I mean, we were always looking to get the fair, and we always took the highest bid. I mean, we always encouraged good bids. We were trying to encourage the bids. So this might, like I said, in some cases, I know they're gonna look at it and say that's not worth it. And I said, well, then be aware of that they may be up for a bid or up for a lower offer later.
We also take a lot of vacant land. Structures are rare.
Any questions on this? I believe we have to have a motion to approve this.
Send it to Algis. Yep.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion's carried.
Then the last piece of mine is basically a policy change with our NREM fee. Part of our warning letter is that we try and recoup some of our costs. So in the past, on properties, if they go to a certain level, and typically once it gets to Diane's lap and she's working with it, we will add a $200 flat fee to that parcel to try and recover some of our costs. So not all costs are recouped. I'm proposing increasing that from $200 to $500. I think it puts a little more teeth in there, but it more so is trying to cover some of our costs. So some of the costs that we aren't able to itemize that fall under that 200 were letter reports. So on every property, we'd have to run a letter report. In most cases, those are at least $75. We are not able to itemize Diane's time and her staff. That falls under that. All mailings, all letters, and then all newspaper ads. Imagine running a foreclosure sale in the paper 3 weeks. Those costs all fall under that 200. So we look to increase that to $500. And that's probably on average from other counties. I know some do up to 1,000. And then some do itemize every one. I feel this is more consistent what we've done in the past, but I think the 500 is a more realistic opportunity for us to get some of our costs back. So I guess I would need a question.
Quick question on that, to the legal. Does that fee of that 500, then if we approve this, go into that letter you send out so they're aware of it's coming?
I will back up a little bit. So
I'm
for
just-
this year, the November letter, I just noticed that when I got here this morning, the November letter I sent was the $200. So we'll be keeping $200 for these 2021s. I don't think I can change that after my initial threat letter, so to speak, went out. So we probably would change this with 2022. But that does go out noting that that will be, we give them plenty of warning shots and give them a final date to reach out to us before we'll apply the fee to their parcel.
Thank you.
Don't you have a question?
No, I was just thinking of what's in my letter, and I think it's more general. It would be like you will incur additional costs and legal action.
They've
Yeah,
already
so-
got the notice from him that the fee is.
I send it out there at least twice, and that's usually I think we even bold it, trying to say, hey, you need to get a hold of us, make either payment arrangements or get it paid in full, or we're gonna add $200 and it's gonna cost you 200 more plus all that interest. Well, now we're gonna throw it to be 500 plus that. So it gives us a little bit more ammunition, so to speak, a little more, but in the same token, with us not being able to keep proceeds in the past, when we would make some fund money on properties, and that was hit or miss, it would kind of offset this, where now, in most cases, it's gonna be a losing process for us in most cases, to take back a property. So again, that's why we're trying to make all things we can to make payment plans, and which we will, and have some really good ones in place. And we've had some success stories where it's fun to see when they come in with that last monthly payment and it's current. It's nice to see that for them. So it does work. And then we have others that play the game every single year. You know, they pay off their 2022s or 2020s last hour. I know it's gonna happen again this year, but at least they're paying that 200, and in the future, it's gonna be 500. They're gonna pay every year more. I don't know, but it works. But if I don't have to take it back, I'm happy, because again, it's a lot of work and it's never a winning process for us.
We make the changes.
Second it.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the changes in this policy change here regarding NIMS. Any other discussion? All the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Here's my contract date.
Okay, and when it says next meeting, it'll be on the 5th or instead of the 12th. Motion to adjourn, anybody?
No, we got a question in the back. Question in the
Chair,
back.
I hope I'm not out of order, but I just want to make a comment. I'm here representing the law enforcement committee from our meeting yesterday. Talking with the sheriff, he was asking us, because of that executive meeting that a lot of us were at in January, we're moving forward with the security portion of the courthouse. So he just wanted to let us know, so I let this committee know that this isn't like a turnkey or a light switch. You can't just enact this right away, because once it comes here and gets approved and funded, I believe it has to go and get would be hiring more personnel, so it has to go through personnel or whatever to make that change. And then I think it has to go to the full county board for the approval. So once it gets approved, then the sheriff can start to hire the personnel, train them, and get the equipment he needs to get this going. So I guess he would be the person that could tell you exactly how long that's gonna take. So just, he was concerned because he hasn't seen it on the agenda. Now we're talking about not bringing it to this committee until April, which means it may have to go into May and then maybe June for the county.
So be it. So be
I
it.
understand. I'm just
Yeah,
letting